Okay, well, we want to welcome everybody and thank the MFEA for putting this.
Yes, both camera and microphone are allowed.
Oh, Ken's talking to somebody. But certainly this virtual wave of things, it's fascinating that we can do this, that we can have this panel discussion from 3 different cities. I'm joined with 2 other people. I'm Doug Burtch, business manager, TJ Schmidt Carnival, also a director for the OABA, which is the Outdoor Amusement Business Association. On our panel today is John Deming from the Otsego County Emergency Management. He is the manager of that, and Ken Matei, who is with the Gaylord Area Chamber of Commerce and the Gaylord Alpenfest. I'll give them a second, if they can, introduce themselves a little bit beyond that, tell us a little bit about what they do and what they do with their fairs and festivals. So, John, why don't you start since you're there?
Okay, you can hear me, Doug?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, Doug, and Ken for inviting me to be on with you. I am the emergency manager and also the EMS chief in charge of rescue and operations for the county of Otsego. Got many years of experience into this stuff. We work with our festivals on every planned event they have. We have an incident action plan for them. We encourage them to work with us, and they do, and they get the benefit of having the support of public safety out there when they need it. And so far, I just wish they could all get back to an operation so we could have our life back a little bit. So we sure hope that everyone in this organizations can get back to a normal 2021. So thank you again.
Great, John. Ken, are you there?
Yes, I am, Doug. I'll be going without a little video today, but I think we'll be able to handle this.
Okay. Why don't you just talk about your role there at the chamber and the festivals that you have quick so everybody knows who you are, and then we'll get into the bulk of the information here.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the panel discussion. I'm Ken Matei, the past chairman of the Gaylord Chamber of Commerce, still a board member, and also part of the Alpenfest group, which is a festival that's been going on for many, many years in the Gaylord community. And without John's help and without Doug's help, with all of the issues going on over the last couple of years, I think they've made our job a lot easier. It's from the festival, a user end of it, where we've met with the various groups, whether it be the police, the city, the Department of Public Works, or DPW, whatever it might be. And John kind of coordinated this whole program for us over the last couple of years, and we've actually used it. We've used it for bad weather. We've used it for large concerts, and I think it's going to be an interesting discussion today, and I hope you enjoy it.
Great. Well, today we're going to brush the surface, if you will, of incident planning. I think we all have watched from our homes the social unrest and the problems going on today around the country. Certainly the carnival industry, we're cognizant of large gatherings tend to be sort of a breeding ground, if you will, or an opportunity for outbreaks of that nature to happen because it's high profile. And I think a lot of those things are looking for the notoriety maybe to be online or get that video out there and so forth. So we want to kind of talk about, what we're seeing, trends that we're seeing, maybe regarding that, but just in general, incident planning, how to be proactive and then reactive. So we're going to look at both sides of it. What you do before you go to you get into the festival, and what the emergency management, what the festival board, and what the carnival providers and vendors tend to look for proactively. And then, what to do reactively when, it's go time. You do have a situation on either the midway or the festival grounds. We don't have enough time and we can't cover every single detail. And a lot of these incident plans are going to be specific to each organization and each festival and each community. But hopefully this will give some guidelines as to a jumping off point or further investigation on what you are or maybe aren't doing with your festival or your event. So let's talk about proactively for a little bit, the planning that needs to go in. We have so many things when we plan a festival or event, right? We have the layout, we have the parades, the fireworks, the entertainment, the food tents, the beverages, all of the things that go into hiring and bands and so forth to get that underway. But safety's got to be the number one priority and umbrella that oversees all of that. I think everybody on this panel certainly agrees with that. We spend a lot of time working on that. I want to talk about Gaylord Alpenfest as an example, because recently they had a high-profile entertainer come in. So this is one type of activity that's going to draw extremely large crowds and probably diverse crowds. And so in preparation for that, months and actually a year or so in advance, we had several meetings with a task force that was put together that included folks from Homeland Security, as well as the county and local officials and the chamber, and of course myself as a representative as the largest vendor, being the carnival aspect of that. So John and Ken, if you could talk a little bit about what went into that planning for that large entertainer and the crowds, and what we kind of looked at specifically. I should mention for everybody watching that Alpenfest in Gaylord is on the streets. So some of you will have street festivals where we've closed. There we close this major state highway. So that there's some specific things I think involved with incident planning that are different for street festivals. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So Ken or John, if you want to take the lead.
Yeah, first off, in the planning part of it for a large concert, it was Lauren Dusky, to be honest with you, who it was. We had to work closely with their staff and their security people and abide by what their contract requirements were. And then once we knew that, then we got John involved, and then naturally he in turn got all of the other parties involved as well. And then we sat down on a monthly basis and plan this whole thing out. So with that preset in mind, I'll turn it over to John, and he could go into a little bit more detail.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Once you recognize that you have this event coming, it does take preparations, and we work on the incident action plans, which is a planning P, which comes out of Homeland Security, FEMA. It's a class that all these emergency managers must take, and it helps in planning these events so that you bring the people that are going to be involved face to face, and you sit at a table, you work out any difficulties or any needs that these events need. And in the case of Lauren Dusky, we are on a street, we have active traffic moving. We have a lot of security issues that bases back to the safety of the public we are entertaining. So with that, Ken brought his people. I brought in Homeland Security, the Michigan State Police, our Sheriff's Department, our City Police Department, our EMS, and some fire department that was available, and DPW, city government, all that would be around. So we're all sitting at a table, and we're working out what this will look like and what security breaches at, and then we also run this through the Fusion Center at the State Police Command Post in Lansing, where they get data. They reach out and we give them the information, what we're providing, and we send it to the Fusion Center. They check security issues or any threats that could be occurring to any of these events that we send them the information, and they get back with us. And that goes on to highlight of their, they know what we have functioning. Extra resources, you got local agencies like law enforcement might have to have some extra law enforcement for larger events like Lauren. We brought in extra officers to secure the site. And then you plan for a very successful night. This is a separate incident action plan from the overall Alpenfest plan. You still have the other events that could happen. You could have bad weather occur on this event, evacuation, possible bomb, all that type stuff that plays into how we would react and how the festival would react and how we'd work together to make it a safe venture for the public. Does that help?
Yeah. So John hinted on a couple of topics there. So we have an incident plan for our overlying festival that's always in place, and we're going to circle up and talk about that in just a minute. But then specifically for this event, we developed a separate plan because we knew we were looking at crowds much larger than we were used to, and that was going to dictate to us. And as Ken said, a lot of the entertainers' own security code and their contract were asking for these additional incident plans and so forth. So again, proactively, months in advance, as John pointed out, we met a lot, sat at the table, and went through both the physical site plan, so we could get an understanding of the layout, what are our escape routes going to be, what are our evacuations, where do we need to have walls built out of portable concrete pillars that can prevent people from ramming through the midway in a vehicle. You hate to think that you have to think about those things, but basically every worst case scenario needs to be run through and essentially vetted through the process of the proactive planning to create your incident plan. So that way, no matter what happens, you've got, or you should have, a plan to reference back to, and hopefully that plan can be engaged and enacted and followed through, and minimize damages and any kind of injuries or health and safety. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration, OSHA, does require incident plans and emergency plans for all events and for businesses. I've had county fairs be visited by OSHA. I've been visited by OSHA. In fact, in Gaylord, one of the first things they ask to see is your emergency incident and action plan. So fortunately, they have a website that is available, and I'll share that with you on the screen here in a little bit, that has a lot of resources, again, that are kind of like this session, that are just going to cover the basic details, what they're looking for, and then you have to go in and pare it down to be specific to your event and the types of things that you do at your festival. So let's talk a couple of specifics then in the proactive approach. And we talked about the size of the crowd, and that we were anticipating a large turnout. With COVID and with things that are going on, none of us can predict what type of crowd size capacity limits we're going to be dealing with, but this is going to work hand in hand as we plan with what the state and the government, federal government, are going to allow for crowd sizes in 2021, and how we can exercise some crowd control, and what you're going to do prior to the folks getting on the grounds. Obviously, fencing, I think, is something that has been used a lot by carnival providers in shopping centers. Obviously, county fairgrounds and so forth usually have 1 or 2 points of entry. And what that does, by fencing off the area of either the midway or the entire event, is it allows for some control over the access points, which allows you to mitigate damages before they can even happen. So things like bag checks, things like wanding and screening at the entrance to the event. So as we prepare for what is likely going to be some capacity limits, and how we control that with fencing and access points, I think you're going to see that that's going to lend itself well to some of this proactive screening of the folks that are coming into your event. And Ken, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, maybe with some of your other events, how they're set up down in Warren for that.
Yes, I also oversee 2 other festivals, the St. Anne's Festival in Warren, Michigan, downstate, and also the Mansalona Bass Festival, which is a smaller festival. But, each festival, we are working closely with the local police departments. They're meeting with us on a monthly basis, like Doug mentioned. I want to mention fencing a little bit, because we had a session a little bit earlier with Kat from the Traverse City Cherry Festival. And fencing is probably going to be a big part of our expense for the upcoming year, because the requirements are going to probably be asking of us to fence off a lot of area that we normally don't fence. And one of the things that we talked about this morning was probably working with other festivals, other large festivals, and pooling our resources together, our money together, so the cost is bearable. Otherwise, I think if we tried to go out separately and buy all this stuff by ourselves, the sanitation items and so forth, that alone is going to probably run us bankrupt. So that's one of the ideas I think folks should look at, is if they've got other communities around them that have festivals going on, see if you could pool your resources, your finances, and use this on a yearly basis.
And that's a great perspective from a festival planner. Of course, I come to things from the carnival provider. We worry about all the costs that the festivals have to take on, but sticking with the safety protocol. This fencing isn't something new. We've been doing this for years. This isn't just because of capacity restrictions and how you're going to control that. It's just going to go hand in hand moving forward, I think, with a lot of events that haven't had to fence off areas before. And I think that's what we're hearing from some other sessions. And we're seeing, as we work through with the governor's office, a pathway to opening in 2021 with the COVID pandemic ongoing. And so, what some of that fencing and that, like I said, that point of access, I can't stress enough. You get with guys like John in the emergency management and the local sheriff, and they can post up folks at the entry point. Even just a presence alone often helps to deter some activity that, maybe some people aren't, they don't have the best of intentions when they're coming into the event. None of us really liked to talk about charging admission to get into the grounds, but that has worked at some communities as a deterrent. Folks that are coming with ill intent tend to not come with a lot of money. They don't want to pay to get in to cause the ruckus, and sometimes that will deter some people from doing that as well. You can also look at hour reductions. We tend to find that most of our outbreaks of violence tend to happen after dark or at the hour of twilight and dusk moving forward. And again, all of this, as I say so often when I give these presentations, is community specific and it's demographic specific. And so it's a one size fits all approach does not work. So what we have to do in Gaylord is not the same thing that we may be faced with in Grand Rapids or in Detroit suburbs. And so part of the proactive approach that I think John can speak to, and I know that Ken through the chamber and myself, is watching social media and watching what is unfolding in neighboring communities the weeks before your event and what is happening on the national stage. You can pick up a lot of what you might be looking for and what might be coming just by observing and being attuned to what's going on in the community. And I think you have to be flexible and adjust your daily operational plan according to what might be going on out there. So John, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about social media and what you're seeing from the proactive standpoint.
Very true, Doug. The events are going on in the United States right now. You have to think about what could happen in your own community. Oh, we're up north. It won't happen. Well, that's not true. They look for sites that are, not well prepared to cause problems. And we really want everybody to be successful in their events, because we know the hours that these people put in to have a successful event and hours of your staff, like Doug, you have to deal with it to keep people employed and everything like that. So our goal as emergency managers is there to be the help coordinate it. So I'm looking now, I will be looking out at how the Big Ten handles their events. How, I work with, I'll reach out to my counterparts in Ingham County and talk to them. How they handle just putting people in Michigan State Stadium. We'll talk to other ones. We'll talk to possible that. We also look at videos of how people handle stuff. YouTube's a good asset to check out how we can, enhance our program. Every K9 is not a bomb dog. So, we have to think about, do we need to run a bomb dog through the area and secure the scene, secure it after the bomb dog goes through. So nothing happens just immediately. So you got to constantly look past now, and you got to get out farther and say, well, what will we need? What will Open Fest need? What can I help Ken get to make that a successful program for our communities and our county, to enhance it and provide security we move our mobile command post downtown. We have a very elaborate camera on that, so we can check out what's going on all the time. Those are things that we can do to assist and make it better, and so that people will say, "Oh, you made it through this COVID thing. We're going to get through it." We just got to figure out how that's going to look. That 6 foot in lines, it's going to be a little difficult getting people into venues. So you may have to be a little farther out. And then once they're inside, we're going to have to figure out what for them to do to have that capability. They're going to have food. They have to have bathrooms inside the venue so that they don't leave again. So we have to go through all the security stuff again. So that helped. Did that help?
And not to put too fine a point on what we're talking about here in the early part of this presentation, it might seem like we're kind of wandering around trying to get our arms around a bunch of subjects, but essentially we're talking about pre-event planning and communication. The word is communication, and you have to bring, regardless of the size of your event or the community, as John just pointed out. Trouble can happen up north just as easy. It can happen in the suburbs of Detroit. Is it more likely in one place? Absolutely, and I think we all recognize that. But as we move forward, coming out of this pandemic and coming out of a lot of social unrest out there and so forth, I think every festival, regardless of size, has to be prepared. And communication ahead of the event is key. And preparing for the worst and hoping you never have to enact that incident plan is better than not having any plan at all. I mean, that is the premise of proactivity here in incident planning. So I want to talk a little bit about site plans. That's a big part of your incident plan, or should be, as once you get the forces together, you get the emergency management team, you get the festival planners and your local city officials or leaders, and you get your vendors such as your carnival provider. I come at it from the carnival provider perspective, but let's be honest, with the exception of large entertainers, so your big concerts, the next or hand-in-hand largest portion of most festivals and where people tend to congregate most is on the carnival midway. So keeping your carnival provider in the loop and inviting them to that pre-planning meeting, I think, is important, because we come to it from a different animal in terms of site plan. We lay out a midway that's going to be both aesthetically pleasing, that makes sense to us, that we have our family land and we have our teenage rides and we have our food area and so forth. And sometimes that has to be tweaked with emergency planning as to routes to get in and out, for any type of emergency. So site plans can range from anybody just sketching it down, on paper to, somebody using a CAD program. And I have both of those types of events. Ken and John, maybe you could talk a little bit about what goes into the actual written site plan and why that's so important to the component of the incident action plan.
You want to go first, Ken?
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so I want to make sure that everybody understands this. Every county has an emergency manager. And if a city is over 10,000 population, they may either have the county manager or they may have their own emergency manager. So the resources are available to every event in every community, state of Michigan. With that being said, we function under the Incident Action Command Center format from Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. So they are always about an incident action plan, which will give us our steps, the meetings, the documenting in the meetings, the attendance, making sure we have everybody in attendance. From there, we'll sit there and put the plan together. What we think we'll need, we'll reach out to law enforcement that is at the table. They'll have what they'll think they'll need, and they'll bring it back to me, and then we put it into a template that is available, and we fill in the holes with how this will work for this event. And then the event coordinators can have that to look at, and they have everything from storms to weather to getting weather information. We use the weather service daily. We get on their site for the event. Every event we've had, we use the National Weather Service. They have a software program that you put your event on, and then at your local weather service, whether it be Grand Rapids, Gaylord, Marquette, they'll have that circled in that area, so they know they have an event, and you can reach out to them, or they will reach out to you if there's something in the weather, which is a huge huge thing when it comes to severe weather, because you got the evacuation issues that we have to deal with and where to put people. And then we meet again at the final to say, yeah, yes, this is the way we'll run the program. We're all on the agreement. And we publish it. And then it's available, a confidential copy is available to the users.
And I want to say one thing. We have used John and his team for weather incidents with Alpenfest a couple times within the last few years. And to the point where we've had to, I think it was last year, had to actually evacuate everyone around 10 o'clock at night because the storms were coming in. We shut down the concerts, and we were working hand in hand with John and his team and the weather service with the storms coming in and what actually has to happen and how quickly we could evacuate all those folks. So it was a great program, and it helped out immensely.
And I think too, in a lot of the communities, Gaylord as well, we tend to get everything set up as in the carnival comes in, your stages come in, your independent vendors, your crafters, your, everything that goes into your festival. There's always that, hopefully, there's that hope that there's that half hour or an hour time frame before you hit the go button, that basically you can do a walkthrough with your emergency manager or a member of his team, your on-site security, a member of the carnival staff, a member of the Chamber of Commerce, a member of your festival planners and organization, and walk through and point out, here's the exit, here's our first aid station, here's guest services and so forth. So everybody has a lay of that land. So you get both a written site plan, but then you physically have walked through that. So as Ken says, when the storm comes in, when there is some sort of outbreak of violence, the people that need to know how to move large masses of people and disperse and diffuse a situation know where to go. They know how to make it happen. They don't have to look for a file and dig out that site plan and try to figure out which way is up, essentially, because these things can get out of hand real quickly. And I think we all understand that. So in the emergency action plans and the incident plans, of course, we have to have a written site plan. We've talked now about the communication, and let's talk a little bit now about some reactive mode. So on site, what we do when we're actually involved in one of these things. We've talked about monitoring the event ahead of time, but you have to be monitoring the event while it's happening. I think everybody is aware of that, but I think we can get complacent in that. It's a beautiful, sunshiny Saturday afternoon in beautiful Boyne City, Michigan, which is low crime, beautiful touristy town, and everything's running smoothly. And before you know it, all of a sudden you've got a couple of hoodlums on the midway that are looking to cause some trouble, or you have somebody comes barreling through the town, ready to ram through a crowd of people. We have to. Those things can happen regardless of if we're monitoring the situation, but we reduce the possibility if everybody is trained on the festival committee, the carnival staff, and key people through emergency management on monitoring and looking for things that just seem out of place. I think you can take that a little too far sometimes maybe, but you have to constantly be monitoring. You got to have the eyes and the ears, and you got to know what you're looking for. I know that on the midway, we're always looking for, in particular, folks who want to congregate in large groups, and typically none of them have made a purchase. That's a sure sign that they're not there to take part in the services that we're offering. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're profiling these folks and that we're going to eject them from the property. That's not where I'm going. I want to be very clear about that. But if that group tends to get larger and more people tend to come and they still haven't made any purchases and they're just kind of moving about the area and seem to be not, again, taking part in the services we're providing, we're going to keep a closer eye on that particular group of people, because why are they there? What are they doing? And Ken, maybe you could talk a little bit about how we do that, or John, in different venues in different areas of the festival.
I'll use St. Anne's as an example for these folks downstate. And we've had this incident a few years ago where we had a big storm come in. We didn't have an action plan put together. We didn't meet with Doug. We didn't meet with the police. We had 25 police officers from the city of Warren on site the entire festival at any given time. Storm came through. We had to figure out how we shut everything down, where we disperse probably 8,000 people that were there. The rides were packed, and the rain was coming down. Tents were coming down, high winds. We tried to get them into the church, the school, the basement of the school, the upper portion of the school, and we didn't have enough room in trying to get them to their cars. But one of the things that we learned afterwards, because now we do have a plan, is that we sit down with Doug, and like he's mentioning, having these folks come in, and you don't know what they're doing. We know exactly what rides and what locations on a diagram. So that way we hand it to folks like John and folks like the state police or the local police department. And in case there is a problem, they can look at that map and say, hey, I know exactly where that ride is. I got to go right there and deal with the problem. Or we have a plan now put together where all security folks know exactly what to do when a storm is coming in and where they need to direct people to put them in a safe environment.
John, you want to follow up a little bit on how we handle maybe non-weather related issues? So what the need to disperse a crowd because there's been a fight or there's been some sort of serious threat of terrorism?
With that being said, and there's always a possibility of people want to cause problems. And I think with this COVID, the mask thing, it'll be a little difficult. Now, you got to recognize our Alpen Fest is an open border type situation, so people can come and go to their cars. So in that part of evacuation, either a criminal event going on or a weather event, they can disperse fairly well to the safety of themselves. Other events we've had, we have pitch points where they actually can't get in if they look like they're going to be problems or they have any weapons. That's taken care of before they get inside the events. So the key is, and I was really happy to hear what Ken said about the Warren Police Department. We had that many people there. That is fantastic, because it isn't that you're looking, you need that type of security, but they're there as a buffer to prevent, we're all about prevention. So if we can prevent the problem by the show of organization, that the event is organized and has capabilities to react to the event that these individuals could cause by pure volume of people, it makes a big difference. I think once you see police officers walking in pairs through an event, they have a tendency to reevaluate it, and the other public love it because they like to know that they're protected, and when they come to these events, and they're that people can say, "Wow, I felt secure." And I tell you, that is a big deal. I mean, it's huge. I get people telling me, "Well, I'm glad that event was well. It was a secure event. I felt comfortable. I didn't feel threatened. I didn't have no worries." And we have some other events in our county, so we're pretty familiar with how to handle and what we need to put. And we stage patrol cars. And one event, we staged patrol cars through the event, in case there is a situation where the police officers need to ramp up their weaponry. I mean, that's a heck of a thing to say about, but we actually stage patrol cars so where they can get to more equipment if they need it, better vests, helmets, better weapons, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, don't want to scare anybody, but that's our job. That's our job. We got to be proactive. We like to be proactive and prepared to handle what's thrown at us, and it's only weather.
Yeah, no, and I want to speak specifically now. This has all worked a great segue as I circle back to something I said earlier about community specific. So, guys like John, that's their job. They know what to be expecting and looking for in Otsego County. That's his job, and we would expect him to do that. Just like in the carnival, because we're transient, we get a little different approach because every community wants a little something different and needs a little something different. And I was asked to give this presentation because our company has been privy to different levels of instances like this, where we've had a breakout of specifically social unrest. So I think weather, every carnival provider, every festival has experienced bad weather, and hopefully everybody's got a plan there. I think, first aid, and making sure we know first aid, and I'll circle up to some of that near the end of the presentation about some of those OSHA requirements for first aid in hospitals and what they need to know. But specifically social unrest, which we of course have seen an uprise in with the politically charged climate. And I think, as John just pointed out, people cooped up in their masks and cooped up at home hasn't helped the matter either. And I want to talk about a couple specific instances. A festival that we have that no longer exists, which was actually shut down because of social unrest, where we did have an increase in police officers, more than Ken just referenced. We had about 30 between the city, the mounted division, we had some state police, and we had the state police helicopter. And this is a pretty rough part of the state. And, even that did not curtail their efforts, to cause trouble on the festival grounds. Now, John is absolutely right. The majority of folks felt very safe and were appreciative of that increased police presence. And that presence increased as we got closer and closer to that dusk hour, and more officers got on hand. And we were doing bag checks at the front gate all day. And there were, as John calls them, pitch points. There was one point of entry and one point of exit. And the fencing that we had to use per the city ordinance was chain link fence. It was not a snow fence, and it was the type that was rented that's locked together. We had the foresight to have several areas of that fencing not locked together, and to simply stage employees or guards at that area, monitoring that area so nobody could get in. But we did that so folks could get out in the instance that we had to disperse and diffuse a crowd, which is exactly what happened. So I want to talk a little bit about how we do that from the carnival perspective, specifically on the Midway. One of the key things about a pinch point entrance and exit, which I think, as I said earlier, because of capacity restrictions, you're going to see more festivals are going to have to go to that type of theme park atmosphere where they can control how many people are on the grounds because of the pandemic. One of the worst things you can do, though, is not have additional points of overflow to get people off the grounds. And so we had about 4,000 or 5,000 people that we needed to disperse immediately. And of those 4,000 or 5,000 people, a couple hundred of them were on rides. So remember, when these accidents and incidents tend to happen, the rides are spinning, people are on them, hopefully they're full, people are playing games, they're in line to buy their elephant ear, and you need to close. You need to shut this thing down. A couple of key things. One of the worst things you can do is turn the lights off, right? Normally when we shut down, we turn lights off and we're closed. So we have a plan in place that we work with people like John and the local police department, that when we know that we're going to be in a situation, I have a few folks on speed dial. I also typically have and carry with me a police radio. So at certain festivals, I'm given a communication device, which is a direct line by two-way radio to John, to the city police officer, whoever happens to be patrolling the event. We get a couple of those folks, a couple of my key staff, and we basically do a push. And we start at the back, and you start closing rides, and you start taking people off, and you don't let any more people on the ride. And the ride operator at that point secures that, closes the gates, and stays with that piece of equipment and secures it. As we start to push towards those exit points, we get midway up, we open up the other gates so people can get out. With the front end knows that they're coming, but coming from the front end of the Midway also is that police presence. So we're kind of squeezing the problem folks, and our regular customers, unfortunately, get caught up in this as well, to diffuse and disperse that problem. People get the idea real quick. Once it's only 10 o'clock and you're supposed to be running till 11 or 12 o'clock, and you're not letting people back on riding devices, and you're telling people that they need to move in a certain direction. So sweeping that area, it's no different than a concert venue having to exit if there is bad weather. They've got to let those fences open. They've got to get people, 1,000, 2,000 people out of the way. So having a plan in place for how you shut down is critical. And we've had things from simple teenage kids wrestling and fighting and pulling out each other's hair and causing a ruckus to actual gunfire, actual folks coming, pointing a gun and shooting at somebody on the midway. And we've handled both of those situations in terms of shutdown almost identically. Additionally, when that shutdown order is given, and again, that goes with the chain of command internally within the business and your vendors, which then comes to the top. So I know when I work with Ken at Alpenfest, he's usually the number one guy. Then there's usually an Alpenfest coordinator or another chamber member that's right there with him. And then there's me with the carnival. That's the chain from the top down under the umbrella of John's emergency management team. But once Ken and I make a decision like that it's time to enact an emergency shutdown, John's on speed dial. He's the first call. And he is able to, with the site plan we talked about, get the resources staged to where they need to be, the manpower immediately, because he knows what's about to happen. That is critical. So that speaks to proactive, and that speaks to what we do. So we knew what the plan was going to be. The resources are there. The order is given that we need to shut down, and we need to shut down now. And it's the emergency shutdown procedure, and the resources engage, and the program usually runs pretty smoothly from there. It also enables law enforcement at that point. If there is criminal activity going on, such as I mentioned with the gunfire, it usually gives them the opportunity to find those individuals rather quickly and get them where they need to be. Because as you start to do a big push, you can tell who are the customers that are leaving calmly and peacefully, and the ones that are causing the trouble real easily. So Ken and John, I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit about what we do in the heat of the moment.
Well, in the heat of the moment, Doug is right. We are working as a team, and that's very important. There has to be one person from your committee, whether it be your president or the chairman, that's calling the shots, along with somebody from your Chamber of Commerce. And I can't stress that enough. If you have too many people in the fray, things are going to fall apart. So I guess taking it from Doug, that's the best comment that I could give out right now. John?
We will move, once we figure it out, let's use the storm. I've come to Ken a couple times, so we really got a problem coming on. They react. Because they know we're in the picture together, and they know what they got to do, and they know when they got to shut her down and evacuate the building or the facility or the grounds or whatever you have to do to make it safe for the public. The other events is that we will move in when things are starting to turn the direction that we don't want it to turn, and we have resources available. We have staged patrol cars, like I said, in areas. We also have staff, and we'll also notify that our other counties that we may need law enforcement assistance if we have issues with these large crowds, which is we have to, because in northern Michigan, and we're unlike that amount of officers that Ken had at Warren with 25, we probably just have 25 doing on shifts total every day, for the whole yearly day schedule of law enforcement. We don't have that many. So our resources might be down to 10 that are on a site like this. And if we need to bring in more, we will bring in from other areas to assist us and evacuate those people and get them the right people, and then deal with the situation. Law enforcement will deal with the situation after they make sure the public is safe.
Yeah, I think we could probably spend, we're getting where we're going to be short on time here pretty soon, but we could spend a lot of time talking about, again, additional resources. But we're trying to provide the folks today with a overview, and then each community, I can't be share this enough, has to be very specific in their planning. Some people will have the larger resources, as John just said. You might have to use backup. In the instance I was talking about that happened in one community, we had plenty of resources on site, or so I thought. And I looked up as we were diffusing the situation, and there must have been 25 backup police cars between the state police, the county, and the city barreling down the highway. You could hear them coming because obviously a guy like John had called for that backup, and they were on standby and ready. They still have to police the rest of the community, but certainly they know where that event is going on. That's a nice segue into just the last little portion here about knowing what's going on in the community. I think many people would be surprised, and I was surprised when I got my first visit from the fine folks over at OSHA, that it is a requirement that we notify in advance the hospital that we are coming to town, that this event is going on. That seems like a tedious element, in that, of course, the hospital and the community should know that the festival's happening. But it is a requirement, and I've started doing that, sending not only the information that we're going to be coming to town, the dates we're going to be there, how many employees we have from the carnival, because that's an increase in folks coming in. I know Ken from the chamber has to give estimates on attendance, because the hospital staff needs to be ready in emergency services and so forth for that increased amount of people. But it's not just an idea. It's not just a nice practice. It's an OSHA requirement that these things are done. The incident action plans, again, are an OSHA requirement of both my business and our business partners. Also interesting to note is that first aid and an OSHA approved first aid station has to be present and has to be accessible for the whole time that the festival or event is operating. And it can't be just that you go to your office and you open up the plastic container you bought at Rite Aid that's got some Band-Aids and Neosporin in it. That doesn't sit too well. There has to be a designated trained personnel and staff and a first aid station. So I think it's imperative that the carnival and the festival work together to find out who's going to provide those services. And I think Ken remembers when we had a visit from OSHA up at Alpenfest, and I had my first aid normal protocol. I mean, we have the chemical eye washing things and so forth. So we had checked a lot of boxes. We didn't check quite enough. And I said to Ken, well, isn't there a first aid tent or something somewhere? And no, they relied on the hospital, and they had an ambulance or something nearby. But no, there was not a designated first aid station. I still am mad at Ken because I got cited for that, not him. But we know now that every event you have to be able to delineate to an OSHA inspector where that first aid station is, and that is part of the incident action plan. So I want to just kind of summarize what we've talked about today. I know it's a lot of information, and you could go into subcategory after subcategory of specifics, but we tried to hit some highlights, those being proactive communication, early meetings, communication during the event, the chain of command, written site plans, incident action plans, how we're going to respond. I think it's important, as John said, every county has an emergency management director, and do you know who that is? And are you working with them in the weeks prior to your event, monitoring the social media, how to disperse and diffuse a crowd and a situation, and when those things likely happen. Ken and John, if you could just kind of summarize a couple things. I'm going to throw up on the screen, I think, if I can do this, the OSHA website, and just kind of let people take a look at that will go into more specifics and help them develop an incident plan that will align with what they need. So guys, if you want to just kind of give a few final thoughts.
Well, I think everybody needs to come to the table, and like the hospital, our hospital is at the table. We cannot think that we've got, without bringing everybody to the table, we can't think we got every T crossed and I dotted without bringing all the players to the table to assist in this event, and make you feel comfortable as a vendor coming in that we have capabilities of helping you. It's huge. I put put a lot of time in when these events going on, because that's my job, is to make sure it goes seamlessly and we don't have any issues, and we can say, well, that was a great plan and it worked, and we can put it to rest and we'll redo a new one next year. Our goal is to have the events, the festivals, the whatever it is, be the fairs, all to have successful events. Ken?
Well, the only thing I have to stress is communication and teamwork. I hear complaints from people that come to some of these festivals that say we've got too much security at the festival. Well, I don't think we have enough security. I think there's a lot of families that come to these festivals that look for the safety of their children, the safety of themselves, and have a good time and not have to worry about any problems. So the biggest thing, communication, teamwork, working together, and everyone should have a successful festival after that.
Yeah, I just appreciate everybody jumping on here. If I don't know if we've got any questions. Doesn't look like we do at this point, but I will forward anybody that wants this website. I'll forward that information. I'll forward my information. I'm sure John and Ken would be happy to answer any questions from anybody around the state on how we handle things. I also want to point out too, to all the festivals out there and so forth, you can request of your carnival provider information on how they've trained their staff to handle these instances. And I don't mean that you have to ask for written guidelines and so forth, but have a conversation with what the carnival plans to do and what their employees plan to do should you have some social unrest or outbreak. And that way you that's part of the communication tool. So you can rest assured that the carnival knows what they're going to do to secure their area and how that's going to look, which will help you springboard on how to secure the rest of the venue and event. So I appreciate John and Ken. Thanks, guys. I appreciate everybody that was here. And we're going to sign off of this session. I don't know where everybody else goes once we say goodbye, but enjoy the rest of the virtual convention and have a successful 2021. And hopefully we can get it off the ground. So take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.